Welcome back to Chat Like a Native. We're diving into something a little different today.
Yeah, a bit unexpected.
Might sound kind of crazy, but
It's a good kind of crazy, though.
it is a good kind of crazy. We're talking about how to actually change the way you think
Whoa.
in order to become more fluent in English.
Yeah, mind blown.
Mind blown. And especially, we're focusing on those of you out there who are at that intermediate level,
Yeah, feeling stuck.
feeling stuck. So
We're going to get you unstuck.
we're going to get you unstuck. So have you ever caught yourself, mentally translating word for word?
Like every time I talk.
Like every time you talk, you're trying to find the perfect match for each word in your native language to an English equivalent.
Totally.
So tempting, right?
Yeah, it feels right, you know?
It feels right.
But it can actually be holding you back. Ooh. It's like
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
trying to force a square peg into a round hole. You might be able to kind of jam it in there, but it's not going to work as smoothly as if it was.
Right. It's not gonna be pretty.
No, it's not going to be pretty.
So why is that? Why is that? It seems like the most logical way to learn a language, right?
Well, yeah, when you're first starting out,
Right.
but as you progress, it's all about speed.
Mm.
When you're translating in your head, you're making your brain do double the work.
Oh, yeah.
You're processing the meaning in your native language,
Well,
and then again in English.
oh, my brain is already tired.
It's tiring.
That's like a mental marathon every time you want to say something.
In every sentence.
Yeah, it's like when you're searching for a word
Uh-huh.
and then there's this awkward silence
Yeah, panic.
while your brain is like,
Searching for it?
where is it? Where is it? And everybody's looking at you.
Yeah, they're like, what's going on?
What's going on in there?
Right.
And then not only that, but it can also lead to some really unnatural sounding sentences.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes what sounds perfectly normal in your native language
It's
just doesn't translate well into English.
It's those nuances,
It is. And
Yeah.
you end up with these phrases that are technically correct,
Yeah.
but just sound a little
A little off.
off. I've been there for sure.
Up in there.
Like you think you nailed it, and then you get that look,
That puzzled look.
that puzzled look, like,
Oh, wait, watch. Wait, what did you just say?
right, and you're like, oh, I thought I got it.
And then also it can be hard to grasp, like, the nuances of English, like
Yeah.
the idioms.
Idioms, the humor.
The humor, like you're missing out on all the richness,
Absolutely.
all the fun of the language if you're constantly trying to
Find those correct translations.
find those direct translations. So it's so important to just shift our thinking
Yes.
and start operating in English directly.
To where it becomes like your default mode of thought,
Yeah, you're just living and breathing English.
just living and breathing it.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it, but how
Right.
do we do that? What are the benefits, first of all?
Okay.
What are the benefits of making this mental shift?
Okay, so think about speed
Okay.
and confidence. When you stop translating, your responses become almost instant,
Okay.
and your speech just flows
Like you're not
more naturally.
You're not having those awkward pauses anymore.
Nope.
You're not fumbling for the words.
No, it's like
You're in the conversation.
you're there, you're present,
You're present.
and you're confident.
And you're confident. It's like taking off those training wheels.
Yeah.
And finally riding a bike.
Yeah, you're free.
You're free.
You're free. And with that comes confidence.
Yeah.
Because when you can communicate easily, naturally, you're more comfortable
right.
speaking up, sharing your thoughts, engaging in conversations
Without
without hesitation.
without second guessing yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like that aha moment when you can finally crack a joke in English.
Yeah.
And everybody gets it.
And everybody laughs.
And they're like, I belong.
You belong, yes. And you know what else happens when you start thinking in English?
Tell me.
You start to absorb the grammar and the cultural nuances
Okay.
in a much more natural way.
So it's not
just memorizing rules.
right.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah,
developing a feel for the language.
a feel.
Right.
I like that. It's like learning to dance. At first you're counting steps.
Yeah.
You're following this rigid formula, but then eventually
Yeah, you feel the music.
you feel the music and you're moving naturally.
You're just dancing.
Yeah, just dancing.
Yeah.
I like that. So it's about internalizing the language rather than trying to force it
Yes.
into your existing mental framework.
You got. Okay, but how do we actually do this?
Right. The big question.
How do we train our brains
Yeah.
to think in English?
Well, one of the most effective ways is to immerse yourself in the language.
Yeah.
But we're not just talking about, watching movies or listening to music.
Okay, so go deeper.
We're talking about going deeper.
Oh.
We're talking about creating an English-speaking world around you.
Okay, how do we do that?
Okay, well, let's start with something simple but surprisingly powerful.
Okay.
Labeling objects in your home with their English names.
Now, I know this sounds a little silly.
It does. It does sound silly, but it works.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's constant, visual reminders that reinforce those connections.
Between the object and the English word.
Exactly.
It's like sneaky vocabulary building.
Totally.
Without even realizing it.
Yeah, you're just living your life.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. And you know what? The key is to make it a habit.
Yeah.
Instead of just labeling a few things,
and forgetting about it.
make it an ongoing project.
Right.
Like every time you learn a new word,
Think about, how can I incorporate this into my labeled world?
where can I stick this?
Right, exactly.
So it's like
Engaging
actively engaging
with the language.
with the language, even in the most
Mundane, tiny
mundane,
bullshit.
everyday parts of your routine.
Exactly.
All right, so what else?
Another thing you can try is designating, English-only times
Okay.
during the day.
Like you're just going to speak English?
Yeah, like an hour in the morning where you only consume English content.
Okay.
Read an article, listen to a podcast, whatever.
That show.
Yeah, or commit to speaking English during your commute.
Ooh.
If
Yeah.
you're on the bus, on the train,
Yeah.
just talk to yourself in English.
So it's about making that conscious effort to switch your brain
Yeah.
into English mode.
Into English mode.
And it doesn't have to be any huge, right?
Or elaborate.
Small things, like even thinking in English
Okay.
while you're doing something like brushing your teeth
Oh, yeah, I like that.
or taking a shower,
Okay.
simple things.
Those are great ideas. It's all about finding those small manageable ways to incorporate English into your routine.
Exactly.
And making it a habit.
Make it a habit.
So that the more you do it,
The more natural it becomes.
the more naturally
Yeah.
your brain will start to adopt it
It'll become second nature.
as its default mode of thinking.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Now, let's move on to speaking practice.
Ah, yes,
This is where I hit a wall.
the tricky part.
It's so hard.
Yeah, because it's one thing to understand and think in English, but then to actually speak it out loud,
Yeah.
it's a whole different ball game.
It's intimidating.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have
Regular opportunities to speak with native speakers.
right. So how do we get that practice?
Well, you don't necessarily need
Okay.
a conversation partner to get that practice.
Really?
Yeah, you can talk to yourself.
Oh, okay.
Literally.
What does that look like?
Well, you can narrate your day
Okay.
in English.
What you mean, like?
As you're doing things,
Yeah.
just talk about what you're doing, what you're seeing, what you're thinking.
So I'm like having my own little English radio show
Exactly.
where I'm the host and the guest.
You are the host and the guest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would help me get more comfortable with just thinking,
Yeah, expressing yourself.
expressing myself spontaneously
Spontaneously, yes.
because there's no pressure.
No pressure.
No one's listening
Nobody's judging you
except for me.
except for you.
Okay, and another thing we can do is
Yeah.
record ourselves.
Yes, it's so helpful. You can read a passage
Right.
from a book or just talk about your day, whatever you want.
And then listen back.
And then listen back.
That's scary.
It can be scary, but it's so helpful.
Yeah.
Because you can
to hear yourself.
to hear what you sound like.
Yeah, from an outside perspective.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's not about being perfect.
No, not at all.
It's
It's about identifying
Yeah.
those areas where you can improve.
Where you can improve.
Yeah.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Progress, not perfection. Absolutely.
And speaking of progress,
Mhm.
let's talk about vocabulary.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that can be
A huge hurdle
a huge hurdle
for a lot of learners.
Yeah, for a lot of learners.
Yeah, but the key is to learn smart, not just hard.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means instead of memorizing long lists of isolated words,
Right.
focus on phrases
Okay.
and expressions
That are used
that are commonly used in conversation.
in conversations.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're learning how the words
So they work together.
work together.
Yeah, the context is key.
It's like learning the moves of a dance routine instead of
Instead of just the steps.
the steps.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
And pay attention to themes and topics that you're interested in.
Okay.
Like if you love cooking,
Yeah.
focus on learning vocabulary related to food.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it keeps it interesting.
It does.
You're not only learning,
Right?
but you're also expanding your knowledge in an area you enjoy.
So it's like you're hitting two birds with one stone.
2 birds, 1 stone. Exactly.
And then we have flashcards
Flashcards.
and spaced repetition.
Yes, spaced repetition.
And there are tons of
apps and websites.
apps and websites
Yeah.
that can help us with this.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
So it's about strategically reviewing
Yes.
at spaced intervals
Spaced intervals.
to help us remember
To get it in that long-term memory.
long-term memory.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot today.
We have
And we've given our listeners
a lot to think about.
a lot to think about. Yeah. But let's be real, it's not easy to break old habits
No.
and adopt
Right.
these new ways of thinking.
A challenge.
So, what are some common challenges
Okay.
that
Yes.
people might face?
One of the biggest ones
Yeah.
is the fear of making mistakes.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah, it's natural, right?
Yeah.
You want to avoid errors, especially when
you're trying to impress somebody.
or when you're speaking a new language.
Yeah, my heart's pounding
Right.
just thinking about it.
It's that feeling of like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to say anything wrong.
Yeah.
But making mistakes is essential to learning.
How so?
Well, think about it. When you make a mistake,
Yeah.
you're highlighting an area where you need to improve.
Okay.
It's like a little flag that's saying, hey, pay attention here.
Okay. Okay.
You need to work on this.
It's like falling off a bike when you're first learning to ride a bike.
Exactly.
You fall off.
You learn what not to do.
You learn what not to do.
Okay, okay,
Every time you make a mistake,
okay,
you're getting valuable feedback
okay.
that helps you grow.
So it's a shift in perspective, right?
Yeah, it's a mindset shift.
So instead of viewing it as a failure,
Right.
you view it as
As an opportunity
an opportunity a little
to
bit.
learn and grow.
Okay, I like that.
And the more you practice,
Yeah,
the more comfortable you'll become
with making mistakes.
with making mistakes.
All right,
Because even native speakers make mistakes
that's true.
all the time.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Right.
Okay, so what about the tendency to slip back into translation mode?
Oh, yeah.
I know I do this,
It's so easy to do.
even when I'm trying to think in English.
Yeah, your brain just
It just defaults to what's familiar.
to what's familiar.
Yeah.
How do we stop that?
So one strategy is to be mindful
Okay.
of when you're doing it.
Okay.
Like pay attention to those
Yeah.
moments when you catch yourself mentally
Yeah.
converting from one language to another.
Oh, so you're catching yourself
Catching yourself, yeah.
in the act.
In the act of translating and
feeling-
redirecting.
Redirect your thinking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that would help. And also just, creating that
Yeah.
English language environment.
That immersive environment.
Immersive surrounding yourself
Surround yourself
with English
with English
as much as possible.
as much as possible.
Okay, so it's about creating that world
Yeah, that world where
English is
a dominant language.
the dominant language. So you're
constantly being exposed to it.
constantly
Yeah.
exposed to it.
Mhm.
Okay, and of course, it's okay to slip up
Of course.
from time to time.
Be patient with yourself.
Right.
It's a process.
It is a process.
Yeah.
It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Exactly.
And we're in it
We're in it for the long haul.
for the long haul. We are. All right, so
Yeah.
we've talked about the pitfalls
Of direct translation.
of direct translation.
Yes.
And we've talked about the benefits.
The amazing
the amazing benefits of thinking
thinking in English.
in English.
Yeah.
And we've given some practical
Strategies
for making
in
that mental shift.
mental shift.
It's powerful stuff.
It is powerful stuff. So in our next part of our deep dive, we're gonna explore some even more advanced techniques
Yeah.
that will help you, solidify those English thinking skills
Yeah.
and take your fluency
To the next
to
level.
the next level. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to Chat Like a Native.
We're back and ready to dive even deeper into this whole idea of thinking in English. I'm excited to keep exploring this with you. Last time, we really got into why it's such a game changer for fluency, right?
Yeah, it's like ditching the translator in your brain and letting the English flow naturally.
Exactly. And we even started to uncover some of those practical techniques that can actually help rewire your thinking.
Like that labeling thing, remember?
Yeah.
I got to admit, I was totally skeptical at first.
I know, right? It sounds a little crazy.
It does.
Yeah.
But then I tried it just in my kitchen to start. And wow, it's amazing how fast those English words just popped in my head without even thinking.
That's exactly what we want. It's about creating those new pathways in your brain where English feels automatic.
So where do we go from here? What other cool tricks do you have up your sleeve to help us really master this thinking in English thing?
Well, remember how we talked about connecting with English culture through things you already enjoy? We barely scratched the surface there.
Oh yeah, I loved that part. It's so easy to get stuck in textbooks and grammar rules, but when you start to see the culture behind the language, it just comes alive.
Absolutely. It's like the difference between reading about a place and actually going there, experiencing it firsthand.
So how do we make that happen? What are some practical tips to really soak up the culture while we're learning?
Let's start with something we all love: movies. But this time, instead of just watching for fun, think of it as a mini language lesson.
Okay, I'm listening.
Really pay attention to how native speakers are using the language, the idioms they use, the slang, even the humor.
You know, I've noticed that sometimes I can understand the individual words, but the overall meaning, like the joke, goes right over my head.
That's because of those cultural nuances. They add so much richness to the language, but they can be tricky to grasp if you're not immersed in the culture.
So what should I do? Pause the movie every 5 seconds and look everything up.
Well, maybe not every 5 seconds, but don't be afraid to pause, rewind, look up words you don't know, or even try to imitate how the actors are speaking.
Turning movie night into language practice?
Yeah.
I like it.
And speaking of things that are fun and engaging, music has this incredible power to connect us across cultures, and it's a fantastic tool for language learning.
Oh yeah, I find myself singing along to English songs all the time,
Yeah.
even if I don't know all the words.
That's awesome. But to really make it work for you, don't just passively listen, actively engage with the lyrics.
Okay, so what do you mean by that?
Try to figure out what the song is about. Notice the rhyme schemes, the metaphors, how the story is being told through the lyrics.
So it's about going beyond just enjoying the melody and really paying attention to how the words are being used.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to sing along at the top of your lungs, even if you mess up the words. It's all about practicing and having fun.
Karaoke night just became language homework.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about reading. Books can open up a whole new world of vocabulary, grammar, and writing styles.
I love reading, but sometimes I feel like I get bogged down trying to understand every single word in an English book.
I hear you. And that's a common mistake. Don't get hung up on every single word. Focus on understanding the overall meaning of what you're reading.
So it's more about enjoying the story and picking up new words and phrases along the way, rather than getting lost in the details.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to try different genres of books. Maybe you love mysteries, but why not try a biography or some historical fiction? You might be surprised at what you discover.
Expanding my reading horizons, that's a great idea. Okay, so we've got movies, music, and reading. What about some more out-of-the-box ways to connect with English culture?
All right, how about games? And I'm talking about video games.
Video games. Now, that's something I never considered, but it makes sense.
Right. They're so immersive. Many of them have these really complex storylines and tons of dialogue.
So you're not just passively listening or reading. You're actually interacting with the language and making choices.
Exactly. And a lot of games require you to solve problems, think strategically, all in English. It's like a mental workout.
So what kinds of games are we talking about here?
Role-playing games are great because they have so much dialogue and character interaction. Strategy games can be awesome for vocabulary building, and even simple word games or puzzles can be a fun way to sneak in some learning.
So next time I'm playing video games, I can tell myself I'm actually studying.
Exactly. Now, for the ultimate cultural immersion experience travel.
Oh, there's nothing like being in an English-speaking country and experiencing the language firsthand.
It's like taking everything we've been talking about, movies, music, conversations, and amplifying it times 10.
It's total sensory overload, but in the best way possible.
Right. But even if you can't travel right now, you can still bring that travel experience into your home.
How do we do that?
Watch travel documentaries or vlogs, listen to podcasts that interview people from different English-speaking countries. You can even find language partners online who are willing to share their culture and experiences with you.
It's like taking a virtual trip to an English-speaking country without leaving your couch.
Exactly. And you'd be surprised how much you can learn from these virtual experiences.
This is all great stuff. But we can't ignore the elephant in the room, right? The fear of making mistakes.
You're right. We touched on this last time, but it's so important that we really dig into it because that fear can be paralyzing for so many language learners.
It's like this little voice in your head saying, don't say anything, you're going to mess up.
It's tough to silence that inner critic, but the truth is, everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers.
Oh, for sure. I've heard plenty of native English speakers make grammatical errors.
It's part of being human. And the key is to remember that mistakes are actually a crucial part of learning.
Okay, but how can we change our mindset to see mistakes as something positive?
Think of it this way. When you make a mistake, you're basically highlighting an area that needs more attention.
Like a little red flag that says, hey, work on this.
Exactly. So instead of getting discouraged, use it as an opportunity to learn and improve.
I like that. It's about turning those oops moments into something positive.
It's a total mindset shift, and it takes time, but it's so worth it.
So, what can we do to get more comfortable with making mistakes and using them to our advantage?
First, create a safe and supportive learning environment for yourself. Surround yourself with people who encourage you, who are patient with your mistakes, and who want to see you succeed.
That makes a huge difference. It's so much easier to take risks and try new things when you know you're not being judged.
Absolutely. And don't forget to laugh at yourself sometimes. Making mistakes is part of the process. Don't take it too seriously.
I love that. All right, so we've talked about conquering the fear of making mistakes. What about staying motivated? Language learning can be a long journey, and it's easy to lose steam along the way.
Motivation is essential. It's what keeps us going when the going gets tough.
So how do we keep that fire burning, especially when we hit those inevitable plateaus or feel like we're not making progress?
One of the best things you can do is set realistic goals for yourself. Don't try to learn everything at once or become fluent overnight. It's not going to happen.
Right, it's about taking baby steps and focusing on those small, achievable milestones that keep you moving forward.
Exactly. Break down your learning into smaller chunks and celebrate those wins along the way.
It's like running a marathon. You wouldn't expect to sprint the entire distance. You'd pace yourself, take breaks when you need them, and celebrate those mile markers as you go.
Another tip is to find a learning style that works for you. We're all different. Some people are visual learners, others prefer auditory learning, and still others learn best by doing. Experiment and find what clicks for you.
That's such a good point. We need to figure out what works best for us and create our own personalized language learning journey.
And don't be afraid to mix things up. If you get bored with your routine, try something new. Variety keeps things interesting and can help you stay motivated.
It's like adding spice to your language learning recipe. Okay, so we've got goals, learning styles, and variety. But sometimes, let's be honest, motivation just boils down to one thing: fun.
You got it. Learning a language shouldn't feel like a chore. It should be something you enjoy.
So how do we inject more fun into the process?
Do things you already enjoy, but do them in English. Watch funny movies, listen to upbeat music, play games, connect with other learners, anything that makes you happy and gives you a chance to use the language.
It's about making language learning a natural part of your life, not something you dread.
Exactly. And the more you enjoy it, the more likely you are to stick with it and see results.
I love that. Okay, before we move on, I think it's important to talk about something that a lot of intermediate learners struggle with: breaking through that intermediate plateau.
Ah, yes, the dreaded plateau. It's that point where you feel like you've hit a wall, you're not making much progress, even though you're putting in the effort.
It's like being stuck in language limbo. You've mastered the basics, but you're not quite fluent yet. It can be so frustrating.
It can be a real motivation killer, but don't worry, there are ways to overcome it. One strategy is to simply increase the intensity of your learning.
So if I've been taking it easy, it's time to kick things up a notch.
Exactly. Challenge yourself with more difficult materials. Try more demanding activities. Push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit.
So instead of sticking with those easy books and movies, maybe it's time to try reading a classic novel or watch a documentary on a more complex topic.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to seek out opportunities to practice speaking with native speakers. Join a conversation group, find a language partner online, or even strike up a conversation with someone you meet at a coffee shop.
It's about pushing past that comfort zone and actively seeking out those challenging but rewarding opportunities to use the language.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about another crucial element of breaking through the plateau, focusing on your weaknesses.
We need to be honest with ourselves about where we struggle the most, right?
You got it. If grammar is your nemesis, spend extra time studying and practicing those grammar rules. If speaking is your biggest fear, find opportunities to practice speaking as much as possible.
It's about creating a targeted plan to attack those weak spots.
It's like working with a personal trainer. They assess your fitness level, identify areas that need work, and then create a customized plan to help you reach your goals.
So it's not just about practicing more, it's about practicing smarter.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to ask for help. Don't be afraid to reach out to a teacher, tutor, or language partner for guidance.
Sometimes we try to do everything on our own, but having a support system can make all the difference.
Absolutely. Okay, we've talked about upping the intensity, focusing on weaknesses, and getting help when we need it. Anything else we can do to bust through that plateau and move closer to fluency?
What about mindset?
Mindset. Mindset is everything. It can truly make or break your language learning journey.
You know, I hear that word mindset a lot these days, but I'm not always sure what it really means.
It's essentially your attitude and beliefs about yourself and your abilities. It's how you approach challenges, setbacks, and successes.
So if I believe that I can learn English, if I'm positive and persistent, I'm more likely to reach my goals.
Exactly. But if you're constantly doubting yourself and thinking negative thoughts, you're more likely to give up before you even get started.
It's like trying to climb a mountain with a backpack full of rocks. It's going to be much harder to reach the top if you're weighed down with negativity.
That's a great analogy. So how do we actually develop a growth mindset, especially when we're feeling stuck or frustrated?
Yeah, how do we cultivate that I can do this attitude?
Well, one of the best things you can do is focus on the process, not just the outcome. Don't get so fixated on being fluent that you forget to enjoy the journey.
Celebrate those small victories along the way. Mastering a new grammar concept, having a conversation without freezing up, understanding a movie without subtitles. All those things are huge.
It's about acknowledging those small steps forward that ultimately lead to fluency. It's about embracing the journey, not just the destination.
And another thing that's super important is self-compassion.
Oh, yes. Self-compassion is key.
What does that look like in language learning?
It's about being kind to yourself, cutting yourself some slack, and treating yourself with the same understanding you would offer a good friend.
We can be so hard on ourselves, especially when we're learning something new.
It's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others and feeling like we're not good enough. But the truth is, everyone learns at their own pace.
It's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Exactly. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and never give up on your dreams of fluency.
This is such good stuff. Okay, so we've got a growth mindset and self-compassion in our toolkit. What else can we do to really boost our confidence as language learners?
Let's talk about visualization.
Visualization, like picturing myself speaking English fluently.
Exactly. It might sound a bit woo-woo, but visualization is actually a really powerful technique for improving performance in all areas of life, including language learning.
Okay, I'm willing to try anything at this point, so how does it work?
When you visualize yourself speaking English confidently and fluently, you're basically creating a mental blueprint for success.
So I'm training my brain to believe that it's possible, even if I'm not quite there yet.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is that this mental rehearsal can actually have a real impact on your performance.
It's like tricking my brain into believing I'm already a fluent English speaker.
It's like giving your brain a sneak peek of what success looks and feels like.
Okay, I'm in. How do I get started with this visualization thing?
Find a quiet place where you can relax and focus. Close your eyes and imagine yourself in a situation where you're speaking English confidently and effortlessly.
So I could picture myself having a conversation with a native speaker, giving a presentation at work, or even just ordering coffee at a cafe.
Exactly. Choose something that feels real and relevant to your goals.
Okay, got it. Then what?
See yourself speaking clearly and confidently. Hear the words flowing effortlessly from your mouth. Feel that sense of pride and accomplishment.
It's like creating a mental movie where I'm the star and I'm totally rocking my English lines.
And the more vivid and detailed you can make that visualization, the more powerful it will be.
So I should really engage all my senses, sight, sound, even feeling, to make it feel as real as possible.
Exactly. And make it a regular habit. Spend a few minutes each day visualizing yourself speaking English like a pro. You'll be amazed at how much it can boost your confidence and accelerate your progress.
This is awesome. I'm definitely
Yeah.
going to try it. Okay, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the most important thing for our listeners to remember?
There's no one right way to learn a language. We've talked about so many different techniques and strategies, but what works for one person may not work for another.
It's all about finding what works best for you.
Exactly. Experiment, be open to new ideas, and create a personalized learning journey that fits your individual needs and preferences.
And don't be afraid to break the rules. If something feels uncomfortable or unnatural, don't force it. Find what resonates with you and sparks your passion for learning.
You got it. The key is to be consistent. Make language learning a regular part of your life, and never give up on your dreams of fluency.
We're all in this together. So keep practicing, keep learning, and keep chatting like a native.
We'll be back next week for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll wrap things up with some final thoughts and tips for continued success.
See you then. Welcome back to Chat Like a Native for the last part of our deep dive into thinking in English.
It's flown by, hasn't it? We've covered so much ground.
It really has. I mean, we've talked about everything from, like, ditching that word-for-word translation habit
Get out of that rut.
to embracing those mistakes, those oops moments.
Because they're actually good for us.
They are good for us. And we even talked about using, like, video games
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
to boost our English skills. Who knew?
So many ways to learn, right? And remember that whole visualization thing?
Oh, yeah, picturing ourselves speaking English fluently, like pros.
I have to admit, I was a little skeptical about that one at first.
Me too, me too.
Yeah.
But then I tried it, and it's actually pretty amazing.
It's like a mental trick that actually works.
It's like giving your brain a sneak peek of success.
Exactly. Okay, so before we wrap things up, let's do a quick recap.
Yeah, let's highlight some of the key takeaways from our deep dive.
What are those golden nuggets of wisdom our listeners should remember?
Okay, so first things first, thinking in English isn't something that happens overnight.
It's not like flipping a switch, right?
Right, it's a process, like anything else worth learning.
It's about gradually shifting your mindset.
Yeah, changing how you interact with the language, rewiring those brain circuits.
It's like learning to ride a bike.
Ooh, good analogy.
At first, it's all wobbly and awkward, but with practice,
You just start doing it naturally.
you don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah, you just hop on and go.
And just like with any new skill, it takes time, effort, and consistency.
There will definitely be moments of frustration along the way.
Oh yeah, those plateaus where you feel like you're stuck in a rut.
But it's so important to remember that every little step forward counts.
Every aha moment, every time you catch yourself thinking in English without translating, those are all victories.
It's about celebrating those small wins.
Because they add up to big results over time.
They really do.
Yeah.
And the rewards are so worth it.
When you break free from that translation habit and start thinking directly in English,
It's like this whole new world opens up.
you unlock a whole new level of fluency, confidence, and connection with the language.
You're not just speaking the language anymore, you're living it.
You're breathing it, you're dreaming in it.
It becomes a part of who you are.
And that's where the real magic happens.
Okay, so we know thinking in English is the key to unlocking fluency.
But how do we keep that momentum going after this deep dive is over?
Yeah, what can our listeners do to make thinking in English a natural part of their everyday lives?
Habits, habits, habits. Make language learning a non-negotiable part of your daily routine.
Even if it's just for a few minutes each day, that consistency is key.
It's like brushing your teeth. You don't even think about it, you just do it.
And over time, those small efforts will compound into huge progress.
And remember that immersive English environment we talked about. Keep surrounding yourself with the language.
Books, movies, music, podcasts, anything that keeps you engaged and entertained.
And don't forget those English-only zones, those little pockets of time where you commit to thinking and speaking only in English.
Like a mini immersion experience right in your own home.
Exactly. And remember, mistakes are your friends, not your enemies.
Embrace those oops moments, learn from them, and move on.
Don't let the fear of messing up hold you back from speaking and practicing.
And if you're struggling with a specific aspect of the language, don't hesitate to ask for help.
Find a teacher, tutor, or language partner who can guide you and support you on your journey.
It's a sign of strength to ask for help when you need it.
It really is. And most importantly, make language learning fun.
Yes, if you're not enjoying the process, you're much less likely to stick with it.
So find what you enjoy, explore your interests, and make language learning a part of your life that you look forward to.
I love that. Find that sweet spot where passion and learning come together.
Exactly. So to wrap up our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. Learning to think in English isn't just about acquiring a new skill.
It's about so much more than that.
It's about expanding your horizons, opening yourself up to new cultures and perspectives.
It's about connecting with people from all walks of life. It's a journey of self-discovery, of personal growth, of endless possibilities.
So go out there and chat like a native. The world is waiting to hear your voice.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. We've had so much fun exploring the world of thinking in English with you.
We hope you've enjoyed the ride.
And we'll see you back here soon for our next episode of Chat Like a Native.
Happy learning, everyone.